Wow, there is some shocking stuff alleged in the new lawsuit against Puff Daddy, P Diddy, including that he blew up the car of another recording artist, Kid Cudi. He got jealous of Kid Cudi and blew up his car, and it's alleged was actually trying to harm Kid Cudi because he was hoping that he would be at home. It's alleged. So this is just one of the bizarre and serious allegations in this lawsuit. And by the way, Kid Cudi went on the record with the New York Times saying, quote, this is all true. Now, I don't know if he's referring just to the car incident or if he's referring to other things in the lawsuit. But I mean, if it's true that Puff Daddy blew up someone's car, I mean, isn't that like an act of like terrorism, basically? So to me, you know what? Here's what I want to say about this lawsuit. Okay, I've got the lawsuit right here. And if you don't know, by the way, some of my audience might not know who Puff Daddy is, P. Diddy. Look him up. He was really big when I was a kid and was one of the main figures in the music industry and helped to produce the Notorious B.I.G.'s albums. And I mean, and Puff Daddy himself had a number of hits. I loved his music back then when I got a little older and I started listening to it. But here's the thing. Very wealthy guy, is worth apparently around $1 billion. Major figure in the entertainment industry and in the hip hop world and all of that, right? And so he dated this woman who filed this lawsuit, this woman named Cassandra Ventura. She was a recording artist as well, that his company produced and sponsored. She went by the name Cassie, apparently. She had some very mild success at the beginning, and then it dropped off, and basically her career dropped off, and it sounds like she was, for years, was P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, I'm going to say the different ones, sorry. But she was Puff Daddy's kept woman or girlfriend or whatever term you want to use. But he bought her like cars and houses, apartments, and sponsored her lifestyle in all of these different ways. So here's the thing. If you've watched my channel before, you know that I am very skeptical in this day and age. I'm very skeptical of unproved allegations, Me Too type allegations against men. And so I was very much pro Johnny Depp. I've exposed other hoaxes on my show, other Me Too hoaxes and bogus allegations, particularly against celebrities, well-known men. But that does not mean that I don't think there is validity at times to allegations against certain men. And what I believe in is the presumption of innocence. And I believe that evidence is needed, okay? Because it's just too easy and too lucrative for people to target public men, wealthy men, billionaires in this case, and try to get tens of millions of dollars off of them with false allegations. And so this woman is suing him for apparently $30 million. And so to me, there's always room for skepticism, and there should be. At the same time, if there is actual evidence and indications that assaults, criminal activities, abuse have taken place, then of course I think that's terrible, and I think that it's great that it's being exposed. So with that in mind, I read this lawsuit, and at this point, at this early point, I very much think that it is a mixed bag, and I am waiting to see how things unfold. And waiting to see, as this lawsuit unfolds, what actual evidence, what actual witness testimony that's alluded to, that's referred to in here, will be supplied, and what the other half of the story is, because I'm only getting her story here, and it could be lies and distortions, which we've seen before in other cases. So here's how I think it's a mixed bag, though. There are definitely a number of allegations of serious abuse, serious physical and also psychological, but serious physical abuse, where she is claiming that she was beaten, that things were thrown at her, and that she was bleeding profusely, and so forth. Now, we've seen these allegations before in other cases and in other lawsuits where it was very obvious that it was a hoax. And I've gone over some of those lawsuits on my channel, and I go through the lawsuits and I tell you, okay, look at this here, look at this here. Yeah, notice how there were no witnesses corroborating this. Notice how this conflicts with an interview she gave a year or two ago, stuff like that, right? But I think one of the strengths of this lawsuit is that again and again, it refers to witnesses. That there, when he supposedly, it's alleged, when he beat her up, there were all of these witnesses, there were all these people that worked for him, worked for his company, and so on and so forth. And there apparently, if this lawsuit is accurate, there are apparently many people who could attest to, or at least have seen, have witnessed the abuse, the criminal behavior, the assaults that are alleged in here. Now, we'll see, right? Because as attorney Andrea Burkhart, when she came on my show, as she's said before, these lawsuits, these are opening salvos, they're opening gambits. They're not evidence, they're not proof. There are no exhibits in this lawsuit, okay? There's no actual evidence, screenshots, witness testimony, nothing. So this in and of itself doesn't mean anything, but I'm just saying that one of the things to me that makes it right off the bat potentially more credible than other lawsuits I've seen is that it does it does at least seem to indicate or allege that there were witnesses for all this stuff. Now, I do have to say though, one reason why this lawsuit is alleging that there were witnesses around is because it's not just, this woman is not just suing Sean Combs' Puff Daddy, P Diddy. She is suing 14. She is suing 14 other entities and corporations and wealthy people. And so, to me, that right off the bat makes it suspect. It's like, okay, you're suing the guy that you allege abused you, who's filthy rich. I get that, but that's not enough for you, lady. Now you're going to sue 14 other people? Really? And so that may be why this lawsuit keeps mentioning that there were other people around, because she's suing Bad Boy Entertainment, she's suing Epic Records, she's suing Combs Enterprises, and it says corporations and John Doe corporations 1 through 10. So she's suing 10 other corporate entities. So somehow all of these corporate entities were culpable, responsible for your abuse. And so, I don't like that. I think that looks shady. But if he was truly hurting her, beating her, abusing her, and there were witnesses to it, then, and those can be supplied in court as evidence, their testimony, okay. So we'll see. That's what I'm saying. We'll see. And I would expect that there would be a lot of documentation too, because she's alleging in here that when Puff Daddy would beat her, that he would employ a number of different staff to intercede, to bring her gifts, to smooth things over, to actually put her up in a hotel for days and days and attend to her wounds while she was healing, because he didn't want people to see that she had been beat up. Like, this creates, if this is true, this should create like a whole chain, a whole network of documentation of people texting each other or whatever, and documentation of employees having to show up and to get hotel rooms and stuff like that. So again, we will see. And obviously, if the guy blew up Kid Cudi's car, like I said, that's like it's like act of terrorism basically. So I mean, if he's blowing up people's cars, to me, that, and Kid Cudi claims that that's true. Now, again, how does Kid Cudi know or whatever? I'd like to hear more about that. Can we get Kid Cudi out here now to give us, a forensic breakdown of of how he came to know this, that his car had been blown up by Puff Daddy? But man, these rappers. But anyway, so yeah, some of the stuff in here is really serious, and so this one may go the distance. However, I also want to say there's a hell of a lot of just absolute, laughable, infuriating bullshit in this lawsuit as well. Because outside of the time that's spent talking about the more serious allegations, like the physical stuff and what have you, I would still say that most of this lawsuit is devoted to things that are a stretch. I don't even want to say a stretch. They're ridiculous in terms of trying to depict this as abuse. The accuser tries to, in this lawsuit, tries to claim that she was sex trafficked because apparently P Diddy, Puff Daddy, had a fetish or a kink for voyeurism. And he liked seeing her having sex, she claims, with high-end escorts, male escorts, and attractive men that he wanted her to find. Again, she's saying this, right? And I've seen lots of lawsuits where things are alleged and, again, turned out to be BS, especially these high-profile Me Too cases. But let's say, even assuming that's true, you know, having if there's a fetish that someone has that you're dating and you agree to it, unless that person is physically threatening you in the moment, like you do this or I beat you, it's consensual. And the thing is, the thing that comes through in this lawsuit is that this woman was constantly being paid off in various ways. She was constantly being showered with apartments and jewelry and gifts, and her entire lifestyle was maintained by this man. At a certain point, when do you say, you know what, I don't want these things anymore because I'm tired of doing these orgies, so bye. If you don't do that, I really do think that it's on you. So I don't see any proof in here. I understand her claim is that this guy would get physically abusive at times, and so she was generally scared of him, and that's why she felt like she had to do these orgies. She says that. But like after a certain point, if a lifestyle is not working for you, then is that on the other person? Especially when, I don't know. I just think that out of all of the things that they could have brought up in this lawsuit, I mean, that is one of the more ridiculous ones. But they're trying to claim sex trafficking, right? Because now it's in vogue to claim sex trafficking as in these lawsuits, right? Because it sounds really catchy and it sounds really bad. I mean, the connotation is really, really bad to that. And people imagine like actual sex slavery, like you're bound up and they don't imagine these consensual things where it's like, hey, baby, we're going to go to this hotel and fuck these guys, and then I'm gonna give you, a $20,000 Cartier watch and a Birkin bag or whatever. Like that's not actually what people think of with sex trafficking, but that's how it's being applied now. So she complains that he ran out of his apartment with a firearm in pursuit of a rival industry executive whom he learned was nearby. Oh, this was so ridiculous. She claims to be traumatized by this event. So, the rivalry between Suge Knight and Puff Daddy, and this was related to what got people say what got Tupac killed, but no, but that ended up being Suge Knight, right? Isn't that the theory that everybody's come to about who killed Tupac? Is that Tupac was actually trying to get away from Suge Knight, and he was going to move away from him professionally, and so Suge had him killed, I think, right? But anyway, the point is, there was, as a number of people know, there was this rivalry between East Coast, West Coast recording studios in the hip hop world in the 90s, and you had Suge Knight on the one hand with the West Coast thing, and then you had Puff Daddy on the other hand. So anyway, the point is they had this rivalry. And so she claims that one night Puff Daddy was told that his rival Suge Knight was nearby, and Puff Daddy got a gun and he ran out. Now this is what's so ridiculous. Nothing else happened. Like, it's not like she says, oh, and then he got Suge Knight and he dragged him back to our apartment and I had to watch him torture Suge for hours. No, she doesn't claim to have like seen or experienced anything other than Puffy gets a gun and he runs out. Well, that doesn't mean that you're going to commit an act of violence. Perhaps he wanted to go confront the guy and he was afraid, since Suge Knight had had his own guy Tupac killed, supposedly. Perhaps he was afraid that that something would happen. And so to make that sound, is that really a high level traumatic experience that you had to take up space in this lawsuit with? And that's where I start to get suspicious, because it really felt like with this lawsuit, if they had just stuck to the main things, if those were truly credible, that would have been more than enough. But then they start getting into this other stuff that's just on its face ridiculous, and then that makes me wonder, well, is the other stuff credible either, or is this just a modern Me Too hit job? She also complains that he, quote unquote, demanded that she carry a firearm in her purse, and she assumed that it was to make her uncomfortable and demonstrate how dangerous he was. Well, really? Maybe it's just because he's a gangster rap guy and he wants his people to be protected. Maybe he cares about you, lady, and he's worried about you and he wants you to be protected. I don't know. But again, like, is that really the level of of what we would put in this major, $30 million lawsuit. Oh, he told me to put a gun in my purse a few nights. And also, and this really gets on my nerves, says that he introduced Ms. One of the major complaints. By the way, there's a checklist in here, and so I'm going down the major complaints. It was so nice for them to give us this, nice itemized list. Really, seriously, you don't get that all the time, these lawsuits. But she accuses him of introducing her to a lifestyle of excessive alcohol and substance abuse. Well, come on, lady. See, that's where it gets problematic again for me, because it seems to be a lot of this behavior just seems to fall under, bad boyfriend kind of crazy hip hop star behavior. Not the blowing up the car, if that really happened, and not the physical abuse. But I'm just saying, like, you muddy the waters with this other stuff, and then it detracts from the credibility of your overall claim. Another thing that I didn't like about this lawsuit is that it kept repeating over and over and over and over the age gap issue. She met him when she was 19 and he was 37. And then it kept saying, due to his age, due to the age disparity, due to the age disparity, he was so much older, etc., etc. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say that in this lawsuit, the age gap was mentioned or alluded to, I would say probably 25, 30 times. That's a problem for me. Also, the lawsuit keeps talking about all these gifts that he would give her as a form of abuse in and of itself. That all of the gifts, the apartment, the apartments, the money, even the professional mentorship, that these were all just coercive tools and evidence of abuse in and of themselves. Come on, no. Because the slippery slope that we get into then is that there are tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of people who date wealthier people, like in Hollywood and whatever, girlfriends, boyfriends, hookups, whatever, and who get some kind of benefit from it, either financially or in terms of exposure or connections or networking, which is also mentioned in here, etc., etc. And if the relationship goes sour, then suddenly they're going to turn around and they're going to claim that all of those nice things that person did for them, or all of the gifts that they got or the benefits they got, are suddenly evidence of abuse. Like, there's a kind of a retroactive, what I see in so many of these lawsuits and these allegations these days, these Me Too type suits against famous men, even though some of them are legit, I know, but what I see a lot is just a lot of this sort of this crap in these lawsuits, an attempt to retroactively reframe things that these people did in a negative light. And it's like, is there no responsibility in this for the woman who day after day, week after week, year after year, kept taking all of these gifts and allowed her entire life to become funded by this man? I just don't believe women are that infantile. I understand the cycle of abuse. Yes, I understand that it's hard for people to break away from lovers. It's hard for people to break away from money, from financial traps and so forth. I get it. But there has to be some personal responsibility here as well. And I just see no personal responsibility here, except she says at the very end, when she finally came out of it and she finally quit all of this stuff and moved on. Well, did you move on? Because now you're suing for all this money. I know, I get it. If he really abused her, she's entitled to it, and she's also entitled to call attention to it. I don't deny that. But to me, there's some fishy stuff. So, I don't know. I want to look into it more. I really hated her. I really hated her statement too, her public statement that she put out. It sounded very overwrought, very sentimentalized. It obvious in a very obvious, crass way. It referred to the fact that that the statute of limitations window that's been reopened in New York and California in cases like this, that it's closing next week. And to me, it was almost a kind of a tell for her to put that out there in her statement as something that's really in her mind that she's thinking about, to me it was almost a kind of a tell that, yeah, I'm trying to get money here at the last minute, and I didn't want to miss the deadline, because you can tell your story at any time. You don't have to sue someone. I mean, she could do a press conference, and she could do a press conference, and then she could lay out all her evidence there, or do a Gloria Allred or whatever. And I'm not saying that's as good as doing it in court. Like, if these are legit allegations, then good. I'm just saying that the timing, it is suspect to me. Right before this window closes, and you're suing for millions and millions and millions of dollars. You know, for example, she says, in November 2006, Mr. Combs invited Miss Ventura to perform his song Come to Me along with him at the MTV Europe Music Awards in Copenhagen, Denmark. After a rehearsal for the performance, Mr. Combs walked around in a robe with a drink in his hand, flaunting his lavish party lifestyle to his new label's newly signed artist. Now, do you understand how often this happens in this lawsuit, where the lawsuit establishes this coercive control relationship between them by virtue of the fact that it says that Mr. Combs was flaunting his rich lifestyle a lot, and that was coercive. I just wanted to make you understand that the claim being made in this is, and increasingly in these types of lawsuits, is that it is legally coercive to flaunt your wealth in front of other people that you're dating. Because what it's claiming is that she was so impressionable, like by the wealth made such an impression on her, and she was so captivated, and who could say no to that? Like, her choice was taken away. Seeing his ostentatious display of wealth negates her ability to make choices for her life. Do you see how dangerous and pernicious that idea is? And we see it over and over and over in this lawsuit, to an extent that I've never seen before, which is concerning to me. Emphasizing the age and power dynamic early on in their working relationship, Mr. Combs positioned himself as a father figure and protector of Ms. Ventura. Okay, here we go with the mentorship as coercion too. So if you help an underling, or if you help a subordinate, or if you offer professional help to someone of the opposite sex, and then you end up dating them or whatever, just understand that that will then also be retroactively depicted as coercion. Listen to this. Mr. Combs also ensured he was intertwined with Ms. Ventura's personal and social life, for instance, by inviting himself to Ms. Ventura's 21st birthday party in Las Vegas. He also brought along famous musicians and producers, thereby flaunting his celebrity status and influence in front of a young and impressionable Ms. Ventura. I mean, is that not absurd? So, in other words, some of this horrible, abusive, coercive activity that he was engaged in includes, he went to her 21st birthday party and he brought some famous people. Oh my God! And can you imagine? You think she was bothered by that? You think she was bothered by that? Let me tell you the reason that he went to your 21st birthday party, sweetie, and the reason why he brought a bunch of famous people is because 99.99% of the human race, if they're having a birthday party and some famous entourage walks in, they're going to be overjoyed because it just got that much cooler and that much more special. But look at how it's being twisted in this. These words, flaunting his celebrity status in front of a young and impressionable Miss Ventura. I just don't like it. So look, if it turns out that the guy was beating her up, if it does, and that he blew up Kid Cudi's car, and if it turns out that he was, then he deserves to get shit for it, and he should pay out, and what have you, and people should know about it, and it's terrible behavior. But all this other stuff, a lot of this other stuff in here, it's very suspicious. I think it's to me, it's alarming to see some of this stuff in here, and to know that these are the attitudes that are increasingly taking hold in our society. Where is personal freedom in any of this? Again, I'm not talking about the beatings. I'm not talking about the actual abuse if it was occurring. But then again, we have to wait and see, because this did not offer any evidence. It didn't. It told a narrative. And so we will see. And I just want to say, as a final thought, I have been thinking for a while, for a while now, Me Too has been going after actors and rock stars. And I have been thinking, man, I can't believe these gangster rappers and a lot of these hip hop guys from my youth, from the 90s and the early 2000s, I can't believe that they've been flying under the radar on this Me Too thing. I cannot believe that Me Too hasn't come for them because and I'm not even talking about outright abusive behavior now, but I'm just saying, like, y'all remember, those of you who are adults in the 90s or kids, teenagers in the 90s maybe even, you remember how attitudes were very different and how being aggressive and thuggy and living on the edge and even doing criminal things and even being rough with women to a degree, how that was celebrated in the culture in a way, in certain, at least in music. And it was seen as being metaphorical or artistic or provocative. It wasn't like anybody was actually endorsing hurting women. But I'm just saying that was a sign you were edgy or whatever. It was different times, hard to explain to people. And so a lot of these gangster rap guys and hip hop guys, whatever term you want to use, a lot of them tried to seem tougher than they actually were. Like Snoop Dogg was from, I remember watching Straight Outta Compton, the movie about NWA. And I didn't know this, but I learned in there that, like, Snoop Dogg was not from this really like edgy, was it Snoop or Dre? One of these guys were not from a really edgy background, and they actually felt this pressure to make themselves seem edgier than they were and thuggier than they were, and in certain cases to create whole like false narratives about, oh yeah, it was really rough on the streets or whatever. And so my point is that a lot of these guys from hip hop and stuff during this period, they were trying to live life on the edge, if for no other reason than to play this media game. And they did get involved, some of them in some sort of kind of like borderline sort of gang associations and things like that. And like if Suge Knight, he's in jail now, isn't he? But if you look at the documentary Welcome to Death Row Records, I mean, it's really interesting how at times, yeah, there were people being beaten up in the offices of these rap artists and so forth, and like there really was this sort of mixing of like the street life in certain cases with the life of the recording artist. And so this is my whole point, is just that I bet there's a lot of bad behavior, even if not a lot of criminal behavior or a lot of abuse, but maybe so. But I bet there's a lot of bad behavior that has been swept under the rug or that is hiding in the closet, and it's just waiting to go, hello, I'm back. They're back. So, I wonder, I there's a part of me that's like, how many tears can I really shed for people in this situation, even with the false allegations? Because it was definitely a whole other level of inviting in the dark side, right, in some of these cases. But at the same time, I just don't think it's healthy to punish artists for their personas or for dabbling in lifestyles. But that's not what this is alleging. This is alleging actual physical abuse and so on. And so even with all the stupid BS mixed in with it, I want to see what happens, and I'm open to the idea that P Diddy, Puff Daddy, deserves some punishment or deserves to pay out. But then again, I also want to see the other side, because we've been fooled before, right? So anyway, if you're new to my channel, check out my stuff. I talk about all kinds of different celebrity controversies and legal cases, and also philosophy, psychology, movies, just a range of things. And I appreciate your support. As always, I depend totally on my viewers. And so my links, PayPal, Patreon, are below. And I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.